so we're in 7.7, simple and compound interest. 3 formulas in today's lesson. The first formula is I equals PRT, where I stands for interest, not A. I stands for interest, P stands for principal, R is rate, and T is time. And thankfully, in all 3 of these formulas, the variables stand for the same thing in all of them. So anytime you see the big P, it's principal. R is rate, T is time. The important thing about time is that it is time in years. Time in years. So what do you think is going to happen if it gives me a time in months? I got to convert it to years. So 6 months would be how much of a year? Half. Okay? So you'll see some of that converting that's needed in a few of these problems. All you have to do is write down the formula. That's it. I equals PRT. People buy bonds as a way to earn money. If a $1,500 bond earns 4% simple interest per year in its purchase price, how much would earn in how many years? In 2 years. So here's why I can use simple interest. Because of what it's asking me to solve for. It asked me to solve how much will it earn in interest after 2 years. So because it asked for interest, I use I equals PRT. I equals PRT. Now the challenging part is to plug in the numbers where they go in the formula. I stands for interest, P stands for principal. What I mean by principal is the initial amount that is invested or borrowed, the initial chunk. So let's say that I wanted to buy a car, and that car out the door costs $10,000. That is the principal amount of money that I'm borrowing. Does that make sense? Or investing, depending which end you're looking at. The rate, that's easy. That's my percentage. And T is time. So I don't know interest. What's my principal amount? $1,500. What's my rate? It's 4%, but all chapter, what have we been doing to our percents before we can multiply? Change it to a decimal. 0.04 times 2, because 2 stands for years. It is in years. Now I put it in my calculator. 1,500 times 0.04 times 2. All right, so what do I get? $120. Now, on numbers 8, 10, and 12 on your homework tonight, this is the first step to find the interest. But then they also ask you to find the final balance of the account. So if I initially invested $1,500 and over 2 years I made $120 in interest, how much money did I make total? I add them together. $1,500, my initial amount invested, plus $120, the amount of interest I earned, gives me my final balance, which I use the variable A for. I'll explain that more in a minute, but we use the variable A to represent our final balance of $1,620. Like I said, this is how we do numbers 8, 10, and 12. Okay, so in example 2 now, we're finding interest rate. It says you get a summer job at a bakery. Suppose you save $1,400 of your pay and deposit it into an account that earns simple annual interest. And that should be earns simple annual interest. After 9 months, bummer. Give me time in months. I'm going to have to do something about that. The balance is $1,421. Find the annual interest rate. Okay, well, it gives me different information here. So I cannot use... I'm going to come back to that. I cannot use the I equals PRT because that problem gave me balance. And balance is basically displayed in a formula with the variable A. So if the problem gives me balance, instead of solving for interest or giving me interest, I use the formula A equals P times 1 plus RT. Write it down. P times 1 plus RT. So there are two formulas for simple interest that you have to know. We're going to come back to that problem in just a sec. But I need you to write down this formula. A equals P times 1 plus RT. What does A stand for again?
Balance.
My final balance. So my principal and my interest together form A. Form A. A equals P times 1 plus RT. Got it? So now let's go back to the problem. A equals P times 1 plus RT. So now I have to plug in the numbers where they go in the formula. So what would I plug in for, let's start with P. What would I plug in for my principal? Plug it in. What number do you think you would plug in for P? Your principal amount that you are investing. Now, what did we say A was again? A is the balance. What was my final balance?
1,421.
1,421 equals 1,400. Whoops, sorry. Equals 1,400 times 1 plus, do I know my R?
Yes.
Nope, I don't know rate. What is my time? Can I just say 9?
No.
What do I have to do?
Fraction.
Oh man, I gotta make it into a decimal. 9, what would I divide 9 by?
12.
9 divided by 12.
3, 4.
Make it a decimal.
0.75.
Times R. So here's the bummer with solving for rate or solving for time in these problems. I cannot add these together. They are not like terms. Can't add them together. So what am I going to have to do? Distribute a property. What's 1,400 times 1?
1,400.
Whoops. What's 1,400 times 0.75 R? And now we're on the straightaway, right? Now it's just a two-step equation. Okay? So, couple things here that were hurdles for us. The first one is it gave us our time not in years, so we had to convert it to years. Another hurdle was that I could not combine like terms within the parentheses, so I had to do distribute a property. Okay? And you'll have to do that on these if you're solving for rate or time. Now that I have a two-step equation, is everybody written down to this point? Now that I have my two-step equation, I'm just rewriting my my equation. What do I do to both sides? Subtract what? 1,400. Rewrite my equation. Now what do I do to both sides? Divide by what?
1,050.
But now, is that a rate? 0.02? What do I have to do to it? And now I'm done. That's pretty involved, guys, okay? But again, take it a step at a time. Plug in the numbers into your formula and just take it one step at a time, all right? And you'll end up in the right spot, okay? Solving for rate. All right, so now let's solve a couple more of these. If they give me my A value, I'm still looking to solve for simple annual interest rate. But the problem is that they give me my A value here instead of an I value, so that's why I have to use the formula A equals P times 1 plus RT. I'm finding simple annual interest, but they give me a balance. They're asking me to solve for balance. So in this case, I would have to use this formula. Go ahead and plug in the numbers where they go in the formula and solve for A. Okay, so A equals, what's my P? 1,000 times 1 plus, what do I have to do to my rate? change it into a decimal, 0.025 times 2. Okay? Okay, so what do I do next? I don't know. All right, what do I do next? No, I don't have to do distribute it because everything inside the parentheses I can simplify, but I need to multiply first before I add. I've got to multiply first. So 0.025 times 2 equals 0.05, and then I add it to 1, and I get 1.05. You see that? Okay, 1.05 times 1,000. Now, I can make that even easier. Guys, come back up to this step, and literally in your calculators, do this. 1,000, start your parentheses. It has to be parentheses. 1 plus 0.025 times 2, end your parentheses, press equals. What do you get?
The answer.
The answer. Okay? But here's the downside to that. You have to put it in exactly right. You have to use your parentheses. If you don't use your parentheses, it's not going to give you the right answer. Okay? A equals 1,050. Go ahead and do the second one now. Do the second one. Okay, so I'm just going to start. I'll be a little bit behind you guys. A equals P times 1 plus RT. What's my A value? 1424.50 equals, I don't know P, times 1 plus 0.035. Wait, it gives me 6 months. What do I plug in for 6 months? 1/2, 0.5. Okay, now I do have to simplify everything that's right here in my parentheses, and I get 1.0175p. Now I divide both sides by 1.0175, and you wouldn't think it, but you actually end up with the whole number, 1,400. Did anybody get 1,400? Good job. Good. Good. All right, look at it. Where'd you go wrong? Look at it. Okay, now the last example, example 3. There is another formula, compound interest. All right, I'm looking for my compound interest formula. Okay, compound interest is going to be A equals P times 1 plus R raised to the power of T. Okay, again, I will give you these formulas on the quiz. Okay, you do not have to have them memorized, but you do have to know which one to plug in. So this one is compound interest. A stands for the balance, P principal, R rate, T time. Okay, in example 3 now, how do you know what formula to use? Well, you have to use, let me see, I got to find the very first one. I guess it doesn't really matter. You have to see what it calls for. In this example, it says that it's compounded annually, so that is my indicator that I use compound interest. Write down your formula, or you already have it written down. Okay, so what do you plug in? 1,500. Which value is that? Where do you plug it in?
P.
That's your P. Plug it in for P. What's your R?
2.0.
How do I change it to a decimal?
0.024.
What's my T?
6 years.
So I raise it to that exponent. Now, again, as long as you use your parentheses correctly, 1,500 parentheses 1 plus 0.024, end your parentheses, hit the X with the shaded in box beneath the circle button, and enter a 6 and hit equals. Now you're going to round that answer to the nearest penny. Round your answer to the nearest penny. What do you get?
1,729.86.
And that's what you get. All right. So, guys, your calculators are like your godsend in this lesson. Use your calculators and you're good to go. Okay? All right, if you understand that, that's everything you need to know for 7.7.